Good evening, everybody. Q Loves You coming to you live. We have a very, very special show for you tonight, or an event, I'd like to say, a discussion, if you will. But we're just going to give everybody a minute to kind of kick into gear and jump on board. So once again, if you are watching this or you're sitting on Facebook, you can share this. So please share away to whoever we can get to see it. And please spread the word a little bit. We're also certainly raising money for Black Lives Matter tonight. We're going to be talking. We're going to get into it a little bit, which is really great, because the number one thing that I think, and the reason why, obviously, look, breathe is the name of this discussion. Obviously, we have, I Can't Breathe, which was absolutely disgusting and horrible that we went through. But a level of this, to me, and something that I practice all the time, is breathing. The number one thing, things are going crazy. Take a breath, breathe. It's the hardest thing to do. Breathe. And then you can have a conversation. You can talk about things. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do today. We're going to talk about different angles from different backgrounds and try to spread how it is to listen, because there are things that some of us could never fathom and understand, but we have to be able to listen. We have to be able to look within ourselves, and we have to be able to say, what can I do better on all sides? Obviously, we know the big pictures of what's going on, the reform that needs to happen, but everybody's got to play a part in this, and we all got to find it within ourselves to be able to reach an olive branch, or to have a conversation, or to push past a fear that we sometimes have in change or connecting to other people. And the hardest thing to do is to change. But you know what? If enough of us are in it and ready to go, I believe this is a serious time of change. I think that we are in for a really important time in history, and the momentum is something that I pray that this is going to be something really great. I just want to get along with everybody, and everybody to get along as much as possible. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to introduce my co-hosts coming into the evening. Again, thank you all for joining us. Feel free on Eventbrite, QLovesYou.Eventbrite. Feel free to go ahead and donate some money if you want throughout the show. That'll be going. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce my co-hosts, and then we'll introduce our guests for the evening, and then we'll start the discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce two co-hosts and comedians, because technically tonight is a Throwdown Thursday night. We decided to put that aside and go into discussion. But I've got the amazing, my friend and yours, Patrick Ney. Patrick,
hey guys, what's happening? Q, great to be here.
Thank you.
A cool group of people. I'm excited to talk about what's been happening. I'm glad you had the right hat for this. That's very important.
Listen, I think you should be wearing one, to be honest with you.
Well, for my bald spot, yes, but not for I'll just look like an ass. But I already do, so that doesn't really make any sense.
You're looking good.
Thanks. All right.
But thanks for joining. Thanks for being here.
But I'm excited to be here with these cool people and ready to throw down some shit.
Okay, amazing. Well, and so our second host, and amazing comedian, and just a great energy as well. Thank you very much for being here, Natasha Pearl Hansen. Say hello. I think you should be unmuted there. Where are you at?
Unmute. There we go. Hi. What's up, guys? Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of this tonight too. It's there's a lot of things that I feel like people are silently advocating for all the time, and now this is a time to not do that silently. So I'm just happy to be a part of this, and happy to be a part of the discussion, and hopefully we can keep convincing people to speak to each other and figure out how to treat each other.
Well, and that's look, communication is everything, right? In every relationship and every job and everything we talk about, communication.
Yeah.
But easier said than done, right? Always easier said than done. So I want to thank you both for being here. But now I really want to get into, because I think we want to discuss for a while, and we're going to try to do this within an hour. But look, I know James has another appointment. We'll get into that, and maybe we go a little longer. But anyway, two amazing humans that really decided to jump on board here. Talented individuals. I'd like to bring to the table. We've got James Moses Black. Say hello, James. You unmuted there? Hold on, where are we at? Unmute.
There you go.
There you go.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I don't want the hat either. Yeah, it's good to talk amongst friends and people that have a commonality. You know what I mean? And we all have a commonality as humans. So and also, I know this may sound outrageous to an extent, but you cannot forget the humor that comes along with tragedy, because it makes you go back and reflect.
Yeah.
Because you sometimes I laugh at stuff because it's so crazy that I laugh at it, So it's not laughing at the situation, it's laughing out at how could that happen?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we said humor, and I know it's your throwback Thursdays joint, but just remember, man, we need humor still.
Well, and I appreciate you being here. We'll listen, and the second guest for the night is a great human being as well, amazing writer. We'll get into kind of the backgrounds of everybody in a second, but Ernie De Silva, everybody say what's up,
Ernie.
What up, peoples? Hello, how are you? I'm a little off kilter because this is supposed to be a comedy night, and I'm not funny.
Don't worry.
I realize that I realize I'm setting myself up for some pot shots as if things weren't incendiary enough. I'm wearing a mix hat. I get it.
Oh, good.
All right, Q. He just passed the comedy test.
I know he's already in. I know we've got to.
All right.
No, let me tell you. I got to say, everybody on here is phenomenal. I mean, I want to go kind of into Ernie and James a little bit, but James, you just got done actually doing a movie called Black and Blue, right? And that's a pretty interesting. Why don't you give a little background of, and just a little bit further? You've got like 100 credits on IMDb. You've been in around the block for a little bit, right?
Yeah, man. I've been rolling for a minute.
And I noticed also you're a Virgo. I saw your birthday today.
But I don't pay attention to that. If I pay attention to that, I'm dead, man.
I'm just saying.
You know what I mean?
But I did want to say that I also saw that you have written. I saw a book that I was reading on. It was called 55.
Right.
One thing I'd like to just touch base on and about the Crow era and a few other things, right? In Las Vegas is what I was understanding. And then also your cousin is a director, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Right. Antoine Fuqua. Yeah,
Antoine Fuqua. Okay, so I just want to touch base on a couple things, like how do you feel about that movie and a little bit about the book, where you a little background.
Well, I'll start with the book. That's not really a book; it's a movie. It's called 55, and I took Las Vegas in 1955 because during that era, Jim Crow was still existing in Las Vegas. In fact, they used to refer to Las Vegas as the Mississippi of the West. And there was a hotel that opened up in May of 1955. I should have showed you the thing, but anyway, it opened up in 1955. It was called the Moulin Rouge, and it opened up on the northwest side of Las Vegas. And it was the first integrated hotel and casino in the country. So prior to that, Blacks who performed on the Strip, they could perform there, but they couldn't stay there. They couldn't be in the casino. They couldn't. They had to come through the back
Sammy
door.
Davis.
Yeah, and one of the things that Frank Sinatra petitioned was if his boy didn't get to stay there, that he wasn't going to stay there. Now, it took a little time, but this movie chronicles that event, and in particular, actually two events: the opening and closing of that hotel in 1955. It opened in 55 and closed in 55. And
Wow.
55 was a sort of pivotal year. You had the killing of out of Chicago. I forgot his name.
Fred Hampton.
Who?
Oh, it's 55, you said?
55. Emmett Till.
Oh, yeah.
Emmett Till was murdered in August of 55. You had the trouble on the Strip of integration. Its Strip was still segregated, and during this time, they were planning on a march on the Strip. The NAACP back in the day was planning on a march to desegregate the Strip. So it covers that, as well as a white man who was a big famous scout, not a big famous scout, but a scout for the frontier. And he has some issues with health, and he goes and he gets an examination, and the examination reveals that he has the sickle cell trait. So if you know anything about sickle cell, it means back in the day that you were Black. Somewhere in your lineage, there was a Black person. And it takes that perspective where he's on top. And as soon as it's found out by his peers at these casinos, his life flips. He's considered a Black man or a Negro, a nigger, whatever you want to, at that time, colored, whatever sort of adjective was in that time, that's what he was considered. He was almost casted out. And so I tell both of those stories at the same time.
That's
Wow.
that's amazing.
That's
I
cool.
never, when I was reading on that a little bit, I had no idea. No idea. And I grew up in Vegas, right? So it's interesting how I've never heard that side of the story, right?
Oh, it was very, very segregated.
Yeah.
Super segregated.
Vegas. Because, I mean, it's like, here's Sammy Davis, one of the great stars of the world at the time, part of the Rat Pack. I mean, there was a time where Sammy Davis was probably as popular as like Michael Jackson was. I mean, he was that popular. Like it from like, you know, the 50s to into the 60s. I mean, Sammy Davis was the shit. And he would play one of the ultimate gigs and have to go through like the basement. It's like, and to his credit, the chairman is like, that's bullshit, you know, and they would listen to him because he had such a pool. And so, I mean, it's Frank Sinatra takes a lot of crap, but I mean, he did do stuff like that. And he was like, this guy's the best entertainer in the world. Stop with the shit and let him go in there. And they did, you know, because they always listen to that guy. Or he'd be like, later, I can go to 100 different places.
It also chronicles a little bit, not a large part of the movie, but it chronicles the experience that Dorothy Dandridge had at the Frontier. And, you know, Dorothy Dandridge was probably one of the most powerful performers back in the day. And she was staying at the hotel at the Frontier, and she dipped her foot into the pool, and they drained the whole pool in protest.
Wow.
So that's essentially, and it's a lot of music, and it's not a musical, but I use a lot of music to influence the thought behind those times. You know, I use a little bit of Nina Simone, a little bit of Nat King Cole in terms of performance, from getting actual performers to do the songs, and even Billie Holiday. So we use about 10 different songs from that era.
Love it.
To tell the story. And that's not a musical, but they help tell the story.
Sure.
But James, when you think about the people you just mentioned, it's like, you know, and put like Little Richard and Chuck Berry into that. It's like, these are the architects of modern music that we listen to. Everybody copies them. You know what I mean? Like the Beatles did, the Stones copied Muddy Waters and all those blues guys. Like African Americans do everything in musical culture, and then people take it and copy it, and then it's mind-boggling when you think of like what they did for the culture of America. I mean, think about it. If you take that away, that's like taking away like 2/3 of the human American mindset. That's a lot of talent.
Sure.
And you know, it's mind-boggling. Like it has taken so long for people to, you know, just be okay. It's bizarre.
Well, and that's why the music industry gets so much flack too. My grandfather is one of the founding jazz musicians in Chicago, so he was actually in the jazz scene during that time. Black man, used to play with. I don't remember if he played with Muddy. I think he did. They might have been right after one another, but same entourage of people. And those record companies make so much money off of all these talented artists. And I think that was the biggest drive behind the Blackout Tuesday to begin with, was to like show the record companies that if we black you out, like you're not going to make anything. So you need to pay attention to how much these artists deserve, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything.
And that's everything. That's everything, because it's like everything comes down to money. It's like, because the corporate or overlords
Yeah.
of this country, it's like when they see stuff like people aren't shopping, people aren't doing, that scares the hell out of them. And I
Yeah.
say go for it. It's like, look what we've already been through in the last couple of months, and then this, and it's like, and the cops, take their money away. It's like, why is this going to education when you see how much money they spend on this stuff? And the military, it's like, come on. It's like the military, they're trying to make as a sub for education. It's like, not everybody wants to go to the military. And the military is to protect the United States of America, not the United States of America protecting the military. And it's like, when I always think of the last words Ike said, and remember, Ike went to Nazi Germany and saw.
Wait a minute, you ain't talking about Ike from Ike and Tina Turner, are you?
Well, no.
Oh, okay.
No, although he had some great licks, but a little crazy. But no, but the last thing that Eisenhower said was like, watch out for the industrial complex, because all they want to do is take all our money in this country and put it in the military so these guys get rich. So, I mean, these are all systemic problems of the same problem.
Yeah.
Everyone, these guys want to get rich. They want to empower the military. They want to empower the police. But when it comes to the people, what do we get? And then you say, Bernie Sanders starts going, healthcare, and everybody's like, you commie rat bastard. It's like, because he wants to give people healthcare, that makes him bad. So, I mean, this is all part of it.
Yeah.
So,
Joel,
Well-
go ahead, Ernie.
I think that those are some really good points. If I may, there's something that I wanted to chime in on before we kind of moved on from that part of the convo. When we were talking about music before, and Patrick, I think Patrick and Natasha both kind of touched on the idea of where the music was rooted. I always found it comedic when I was younger. I grew up in Brooklyn, and so
And sorry, Ernie, sorry. I just want to, while you're on that, we're gonna go back to your point. But
Okay.
just so everybody knows that Ernie has a couple shows that he does that are absolutely brilliant, called Smoke and Heavy Like the Weight of Flame, and it really touches Ernie. Some of the most brilliant. I was in tears over Smoke. So you talking right now, basically, if anybody, when you go live again, we got to go see these shows. They're brilliant. You got something going on in New York that I know you're working with, Netflix or HBO, and NASA's director and a few other things, if I'm not mistaken. But it basically talks about your life, yes. And again, going back that way.
Well, yeah.
But sorry, you can go back to
I've always kind of felt like I was doing stuff before it was ready. And then like 10 years ago, right, I wrote a show called Heavy Like the Weight of Flame, and I wrote another one called Smoke, and now here we are. It's
Right.
still right, but their solo shows, they're very sociopolitically inflammatory, I guess, for some people. I don't know, not for me.
Well, and that may change. That may change now. That may change. There may be people may be way more open than even 6 months ago or 8 months ago when you were showing that show, right? I mean, really.
Well, theoretically speaking.
Yeah.
And Natasha said,
but-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ernie.
So I just wanted to make this quick point, because this was a great part of the conversation. I always found it funny when I have friends that were like metalheads or such, that would, they would be screaming from the gut of them, about like rock and roll and stuff. And I'm like, did it ever occur to you at all that, I mean, they would hate rap and things like that. And I'm like, did it ever occur to you at all that the term rock and roll in and of itself was a slang term that Black people made up to call their music, because they had sexual undertones in the music and they couldn't call it screw music, or else they would never get on the radio or never get, or never get booked live. They called it rock and roll. And now here you are with like this Viking look. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? But like this whole kind of rape and pillagey energy, about like, oh, rock and roll, but you'll have nothing to do with any music that's Black, yet it literally originated, like even the terminology you're screaming. So I just wanted to make that point when
It's a great point.
It's true. All that's true.
It's a great point. It's a great point. I saw a little thing today on Instagram, big surprise on Instagram, but it was my buddy's, I don't know, or his record collection shelf, and it was completely empty. And he said, this is after removing you know, every black artist and
I saw
everybody
that.
that was affected by black, or you know, that
I
was
saw that.
yeah, it was great. I loved it. But
You know, one of the things that happened earlier in music, and you know, I think Sam Cooke was murdered actually,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
he was murdered. It was a couple of reasons, because he understood music and where his masters were, and he wanted to take control of that destiny. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He wanted to take that out of major players, like major record labels. And he now he was starting to bring people in, other musical acts. And he said, hey man, this is what we have to do to protect our interests.
Right.
And then all of a sudden his murder is a mystery. So there is some linkage to music and tragedy as well, because it's all, you know, man, I mean, I just want to say this. I was looking up the definition of murder versus killing today, because I was curious because everybody on the news was saying, well, this man, especially all the people who are trying to get something done, kept saying this man was killed on the streets. Killed? Well, that's what happens when you hit a deer or an antelope, or you kill it, right?
Mhm.
That's a kill, right? And then when the charges drop, they say second-degree murder, first-degree murder, but no one uses that word to describe this man's death. It's a killing. No, it's a murder, man. And the most traumatic thing for me was witnessing a murder live.
Yeah.
Like I had never seen, you know, I've seen people get shot at, whatever, you know, people get shot at, but I had never witnessed a murder. Not a killing. I witnessed killings, you know, killings of animals and stuff, witnessed it, never a murder. And yet that is such a hard word for people, because they think they have to sort of smooth it over by saying he was killed by, he was murdered, man.
Well,
Right. It
Well,
seems like
you have to compartmentalize it and take it out of your psyche, because it's so overpowering, I think, for people to say
Murder is a powerful
murder.
word,
Yeah.
man.
right. Well, in this day and age, it seems like whether or not it's a murder depends on what correspondent you're listening to. It's
Right.
the weirdest thing. Like it doesn't, like it's not rooted anymore in any kind of basis in humanity or like any kind of moral compass. It's like, well, it just depends on how I know that was a murder.
That was a murder. And
That was
you're
a
charging
murder.
him with murder. The
Right,
charges
that's
don't
murder.
say second-degree killing,
Right? We ain't charging
Right.
with second degree
third-degree
accident.
killing. They say second-degree murder. It's a murder.
Well,
Let's put that on the table and deal with it.
I think that's a
Today-
problem. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's a problem a lot of people have, though, that we're trying to like get in people's faces, is you have to be uncomfortable. Like, people are uncomfortable speaking about stuff like that. They're uncomfortable admitting that something was a murder. They're uncomfortable. They're worried they're going to say something wrong. And it's like, that's the whole point here, is you've got to get uncomfortable now, because that's the only way to start working people's brains and making them understand what's actually happening.
And I think that's exactly right. I mean, one of the things, I mean, I'm coming from the restaurant world forever, but running a place and dealing with a lot of people. But the number one thing is the difficult conversations were always a difficult conversation. Well, the hardest conversations are difficult conversations, but it's so much bigger in people's minds, these conversations, and the fear of having them, that once you start to have them, you find out you make it so much more scarier in your mind. Like M. Night Shyamalan said something once about directing a movie, and he was talking about why, I think it might've been for Signs or something like that. And they're like, why don't you show the monsters or something like that? And he said, because the person's mind makes something 1,000 more times scary than I could ever put on a screen.
Mhm.
And I think that's the same thing we get inside of our heads during a conversation. You lead up to this and you're just tripping out. You're like, oh my God, I got to have this. And then you do it and you're like, damn, that was not that hard. But then once you do it and you start making that movement, it just gets easier and easier to confront these demons within ourselves, right? A lot of it just comes with ourselves. And even I think all the way down the line with everything that's happening, it's just because of what you've been taught or what you've been told or what's been beaten in your head forever, that's just the way it is. And to like think that you can be different than that is scary to say you're going to do something different than what you've seen, that your family's like, that your parents are like. There's a lot of, again, I mean, but obviously there's a consistent beat down going on certain levels that you just assume it's going to happen every time in society. And that's the main thing. We got to start changing that whole paradigm's got to shift right now and change that whole angle so that we can at least start, like the African-American community can feel like when they see a cop, they're not tripping out. It's like, well,
here's the deal, man. It all breaks down to this. Everybody can have their own source that they want to get their news from. They want to hear the source they prefer to tell them what's right or wrong. So you have a conservative element. It's like all those Fox News guys are millionaires who work for billionaires. Rupert Murdoch is a billionaire. So all these people and these old people who are scared and from the olden days who want to be racist tune into this because these people will talk to them. They will say dog whistle things to get people to think, oh, that's what he really means is this. And it's like, then you have the conspiracy people, which I know you're a fan of, and they're going, well, when you don't have answers, we'll just make one up because, they did this and they did this. And so meanwhile, you just have all these convoluted messages and bullshit floating around the universe. And all these people in the bottom line are trying to get paid for this. And most of them are getting paid very handsomely if they have followings. And they're spreading misinformation. They're spreading hate and fear. And that's what makes money, because just like M. Night Shyamalan, it's like fears, you're going to make a lot more money off fear than you are going to be just saying what's in reality, because unfortunately, reality can be boring. You're racist.
Yeah.
We're not. Now, the majority of this country is not racist in my opinion, but there's enough idiots who are out there who, and it takes education, give people money. This is a melting pot of a country. And the best things about it come from the fact that many different like cultures and religions have all descended on making it really amazing. And now we have a president who's trying to divide people so intensely that anybody who goes against him is completely taken down. And I'll shut up in a second. But today, the woman, the senator from Alaska, said, "I don't think he's right, and it's time to talk about this. And I don't know if I'm going to vote for him." Immediately, he's on Twitter. This chick is an idiot. I can't wait who the next person is. I mean, that's the thing. People have to vote. The choices are ours, whether we take them or we don't. And if you don't vote, you're creating a huge vacuum for lunatics.
But also that's the emphasis on people educating themselves, because if you vote and you don't know who you're voting for, that's a problem too. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But I do want to chime in on the media thing. So since COVID hit, I've been in Wisconsin with my family. I haven't even been back to my apartment. I wasn't planning to be gone for more than 2 weeks. So I've been here for 3 months. I live in Los Angeles. So in LA, where I've been for 9 years, we're exposed to one type of media. It's a very democratic media. It's a very liberal media.
Yeah.
And literally, I kid you not, physically being here in Wisconsin, I have to call my friends in LA and New York to find out what's actually going on, because the media you get here, even on your phone in Apple News, the first 3 things that pop up, it's completely different. Geographically, where you are and where GPS is pinging you at, you're getting different information.
Think about that. And that's not conspiracy. That's literal. They're like literally just taking money out of people's pockets in order to like make you want to feel like this. Oh, sure. Like get XJ612. You know what I mean? It's it's horrible.
There's so many elements that need to be focused on here. It's education, it's law enforcement, it's politics, and it's media. These are things that really feed into one another and detract from the people.
All about that money. Money. Hey,
I want to say something about voting that you brought up. Listen, voting did not stop Mr. Floyd's murder.
Agreed.
Voting did not stop Aubrey's murder, right? It didn't stop that. Voting, there's a misconception about voting that voting is the end all, right?
No, it's
that
not.
is going to resolve problems. It is not.
Right.
No.
Racism has been in existence for a very long time.
Mhm.
We are now bringing more light on the matter, but it is not voting that these people, when all these protesters got up and they were white and they were black, that wasn't voting, but that made a change. When people start demonstrating, they have been screaming in their communities for way beyond that protest. And I thought something that was so dismissive when someone said, hey, these people who came in and looted, they don't really represent our community. Our community does. That's dismissive. That community was screaming, and those people were just throwing gas on the fire. But
You know,
that community, let me just finish this and I'll let you go, Ernie.
Yeah.
That community was screaming, and it wasn't screaming for the right to vote. It was screaming for change. Change, not November every 4 years,
Yeah.
but screaming for change.
They need to be paid attention to all the time.
Right. If I may, that's a really good point, James. I think that touches on kind of a sort of gray area. I feel like, you know, for especially for people of color. Like right now, as we're doing this cast, a friend of mine who is in New York City right now was live casting a feed of a peaceful protest that's going on in Brooklyn, and the cops have locked them in place right now as we speak. Right now, I don't necessarily see that changing via voting. I get it, right? But I would just like to offer just this thought. I'm going to speak for myself because, you know, using the royal we is a little bit dangerous in this conversation, and I get it. Everybody kind of has their own point of view. So I just wanted to offer this. So supposing that we looked at this coming November from a position of like, okay, we have to vote to change something. I get it. But to chime in on something that James was saying, how do I as a person of color win here? So if I don't vote for Trump, say Trump wins again, right? Or Biden wins again, how do I win as a person of color? This is literally the reason that I brought up that that situation that's going on in Brooklyn right now about feeling locked in is because on a much more of a macro level, that's generally how people like me feel. Because think about it, right now we're being told you have a choice between a reality TV star who is out of his fucking mind, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody who actually helped design the laws that are putting people like me unjustly into the prison industrial complex to begin with for the last 20 plus years and making highbrow people tons of money. How do I win here?
That's
Right.
a good point. That's a good point. Well, it goes back to education. It's like, if we demand more education, then people get smarter and understand that they can come together and make the politicians do what we want. We can make them do it. It's like Barack Obama is like, run for office, go do it, you know. And I wish all these like know-it-alls on social media, it's like, go run for office. I'd love to see you run. They're not going to, because it's really hard. And it's like, we live in an age where money pays for everything. Those prisons that are full of people who sold drugs for like a bag of drugs and they get 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joke. And then they get paid.
Especially for weed.
And we have to pay for that.
Right.
Well, listen,
That's what
It's a sickening.
go ahead, Natasha.
I was going to say that's what I was talking to my so whenever something, there's a lot of things that I stand for, obviously, but whenever something strikes and I know somebody it's affecting directly, I go to the source. I always want to know what's going on at a personal level, so I'm not just grabbing stuff from the media, right? So I went directly to my family in Chicago. My mom's Black, so my side of the family in Chicago is in this. Like, they grew up in the South Side of Chicago. They're in it. And so I called my family, and it was a very emotional conversation I had Monday driving home from Chicago. I said to my cousin Ray, I mean, he's like my brother. And I was like, what do you need? Like, what does your community need for this to stop? And he was explaining to me the way that the criminal system is perpetuating these issues in these communities. They offer no resources to these communities. The kids have nothing to do besides get into some sort of petty trouble, right?
Yeah.
No different petty trouble than any of us had gotten into as a kid. But the cops then target these communities because they know if they pull a kid over, there's some sort of little level of a rap sheet. Well, once a kid has 3-4 things on their rap sheet, they get into the mentality that they can't do anything else besides crime. They get involved in a gang, and then these people end up in jail. My cousin almost got thrown into jail for a blunt because the cop went and searched their house and went into other things, grabbing all this weed from other places and claimed that they were trying to sell and distribute. So like there is a major issue with leaving these communities in the dust and expecting them to somehow figure out a way to thrive.
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say Ernie has, I mean, Ernie, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody kind of what you do? Speaking of, she's going to that. Why don't you tell everybody?
Ernie, can I say one thing before you start, man?
Yeah, please.
Because I got it out in about 5 minutes, but I just want to go back to Patrick for a second. It's because you read James Baldwin, and one of the things that Baldwin said, and this goes to Natasha's point as well. You know, we hear all this rhetoric about, you know, grab yourself by your bootstraps and come on up. You know what I mean? Baldwin made a very good point. He says, "What if you don't have any boots?"
Well, that MLK
Yes.
said that too.
What do you?
Yeah.
What do you in MLK? What are you grabbing to sustain yourself at that point? If you're if you don't come with bootstraps, what are you sustaining yourself with now? And I just wanted to go back to that point. It was an interesting point, and it even evolves now to Natasha's point, is having resources. I mean, listen, I'll be straight up. I got a couple things on the rap sheet, but they went away. Didn't stop me because I had some influences. You know what I mean? I had influencers in my life that kept me like, all right, man, you know, you're sitting on 2 right now. You better do something different. You know, it's as a kid. So it can be done. And I don't want children to think there is no way out, because there's a way out. There's a way in is what you want to be really concerned with, is the way in.
Well, and so
because it's
so
easy.
everybody. So I'm going to hold on one second. I'm going to stay with you, James, because like you said, I know you got to go. But final couple minutes, or give me what you think would be somewhat of a solution in your mind. Something, I mean, we all know some solutions, right? We have an idea of certain things that we can do. Do you have anything to say before you jump off here?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get. It's a combination thing. I'm a religious and spiritual person, so I don't see the difference between those two myself. So in my mind, it's not man's solution; it's God's solution. You know what I mean? It's going to end all this stuff, and that sounds sort of like a not end thing to say. But let me tell you something about God. He's been around since the earth was created, right? So the end thing I push, it's gone. If you want to consider something, consider love. Consider love, because love is what will make your heart change. It will make your mind change. And it's also a very treacherous thing, is your heart. But love will make you change your mind about things. And someone said something like, all my white friends, all my black friends, I don't count my friends as colors.
Absolutely.
I do not. That's a waste of my time and a waste of my energy, and I'll never do it. I have as many friends as I have conversations, because it is a love in me that wants something better, not only for myself, but for you as another person. How can I stand there and watch you get tortured? You know, how can I watch you, who may be another color, watch you get tortured in front of me? It doesn't make sense to me, without having some upflow of feelings. And you know, when I went down, I think I made the joke to you, Ryan. I said, man, when that all went down, I came in my house and I was about to tag my own apartment.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I said, hold up. But that's the thing in this short time, that I would tell people to consider is love, because we all got it. We all are capable of it.
And I think that's fantastic words, and obviously jump off whenever you got to jump off. But I think that's
I want to hear Ernie out because I got a couple minutes.
go
So.
for it. Ernie, you're up.
You asked me what
I wanted to talk about what you do because she was talking about youth, and then you have firsthand knowledge.
I work with kids that are like, basically incarcerated. I also work with people who have come out of incarceration. So things like, the omnibus crime bill and such like that, those are things that like I've had to rub up against closely myself in terms of their effects on people. And like something that Natasha said was really interesting to me, and it gave me an insight on a description of the system. Here's what I mean. Like, you're absolutely right. If I'm 8, 10, and a cop decides to get into it with me about something, maybe he does nothing to me, maybe he does whatever, he writes me up, there's a little record of it, what have you. Maybe 13 years old, I'm doing something else that normal teenagers do, and I get run up on by another cop or what have you, and now he writes something down that goes into the little system or whatever. Little things like that roll around. If I'm 19 and I fail the attitude test on the street to a cop and he kills me, it's much bigger than just the fact that now that cop can say, well, I felt threatened. The systematic way that we've been approached has now given a whole nother part of the system a narrative, which is the media. Now the media can look back on whatever those little infractions were and go, well, this was a career criminal. This was a career criminal. He was constantly in trouble. He was constantly in and out of this, that, and the third. Yeah. Which feeds a whole nother part of the beast. You see what I mean? Like, that's why it's interesting to me how people don't understand what's happening with the protests and things of that nature. And what we're really fighting against, in my opinion, is we're fighting against who's controlling the narrative. At the end of the day, that's really what it is. That's what Fox News and CNN, who, by the way, have both been abysmal to people of color, quite frankly. Quite frankly, they've both been abysmal to us in different regards, okay? But they're both fighting for who decides to control the narrative. And right now, the turmoil and all of this is happening is that George Floyd murder has caused Fox News to slip in its hold over the narrative. If we don't pay attention to the fact that storytelling at the core of everything controls everything that happens with humans, we're done.
And that's, I got into that a little bit with, which I don't normally do on social media, but some idiot troll person that was like, give me statistics, of how racism, I want to see facts and statistics. And I was like, statistics aren't going to show you racism. Stories show you people telling you that it's happened. This is why people need to have the uncomfortable conversations or speak out about things, because a number on a graph isn't going to tell you any of these things.
No.
Right. Hey, Q, I gotta bolt. We gotta do this again. I appreciate everybody. Patrick, Tasha, Ernie, appreciate you all.
James.
We'll do this again.
Hey, James, we'll sit down. We'll do a Mindful Monday with you directly. Same thing with you, Ernie, but we'll do a Mindful Monday sit down. It's one-on-one, straight up for the time.
Take care. Be safe. Take care of each other.
Thank you for your time, man. God bless.
See you later.
If I can just touch on a kernel that Natasha kind of pointed out as well. Again, like it's interesting because I think we've all been in that argument on social media, right? Like, well, show me statistics. This is the thing. When somebody asks me, show me statistics, the only thing that they're saying is, this discussion isn't true until you change my mind. We're past that, in my opinion. We're past that. I don't need you to believe me.
Exactly.
I don't need you to agree with my narrative. I know what I'm talking about. I don't need you to agree. The fact that you would duck behind something like, well, show me a statistic. Really? Show me a statistic about how much you love your moms. Show me. Is that something provable via statistics?
Great,
Yeah.
great point.
It's
Great.
ridiculous.
That's
It's
something
pointless.
you can prove via statistics. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
just touched on that because
Well,
I thought
and you want to the opposite side of the coin of that is that here's something that's real and exists and is not the conspiracy. It's that cops are in a fraternity to protect each other, to do favors for each other, to watch each other's back. If they get in trouble drinking and driving, they're never gonna get in trouble. They don't get DUIs. They get help. They call their friend, their guys. I mean, that's the thing, is that there is too much police officers, you know, and there's a great bit going around. It's Chris Rock going like, you know, bad apples is like, what kind of job can you be a bad? It's like there's no
It's-
pilots that are bad apples. Like, sorry, he flew into that mountain. He was a bad apple. No, it's a whole thing that has to be completely shaken out like a towel at the beach. You have to get rid of all that junk, and it's a complete like
Overhaul.
like wipe the slate clean, start over. I mean, it's that intense. They're not going to want to do that. They're going to say this is going to put people in jeopardy. It's going to hurt everybody. No, it's not, because in the long run, it's protecting people. And the cops should not be the ones in charge. We are, but we just go, here, you're cops, you must know. You know, it's because Natasha, I'm from Chicago as well, and it's like, you know, the cops in Chicago are characters, but it's a fraternity, and they're actually they weren't even that mean. The cops in LA, these guys can be really mean. It's like, hey, how are you? What are you looking at? Like, you know, so.
Yeah.
Take times that, like, if you're a minority, and it's like, Jesus, crazy. They all need to lighten up. They really do, because it's like protect and serve, not bitch and beat up. So that was a little soapboxy. Sorry. Probably gonna have cops kick my ass.
Yeah, you're on.
You're on watch now.
Yeah, they're all watching. We're done now, man. All of us. We're on the list. We're on the list. Ernie, what do you think? What are you thinking right now?
Well, I think obviously this is a necessary combo. Where police are concerned, I kind of tend to have a little bit of a different. I don't feel like I don't believe in left and right. First off, I believe
we were talking about that the other night.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. I think that those are constructs that are given to people to
Categorize.
to divide us,
Yeah.
right? And I think that
Yeah.
I told you this story the other day, but it's kind of relative to this situation. I think there was a poet that I was watching about 3 years ago, and a much older lady, and she stopped in the middle of her poem and she said, listen, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this, I swear to God. She said, you know, I'm old enough to know that there is a revolution coming. There is a civil war coming to this country. She was like, I'm old enough to know what I'm saying. There is a civil war coming to this country. However, it is not going to be black and white the way they tell you that it is. It is going to be the haves and the have-nots. And here's why that was so poignant to me. It's fascinating to me to watch people engage in their, because we all do it, right? We all engage in our political discussions based on information we're getting from people who have a lot, telling the rest of us who don't have a lot that we should dislike the other people that don't have a lot, right? How does that relate to cops? Well, this is how. I don't believe that we'll get anything of too much merit moved until we succeed in de-brainwashing the cops. In other words, reminding them that they're actually of the populace. Because at this moment, and the way they've been sort of created, if you will, their immediate thing is to go, I am not you. I am not like you. Well, yeah, actually you are. Actually you are. You're a working class person, just like I'm a working class person. Just like the majority of the people in this country are working class people. Until we can de-brainwash the cops from that, and then the military, who do they, the proverbial they, right? Who do they have to set on you then?
Right.
They have nothing.
That was a big thing. That was something that me and my cousin talked about as well. And he was like, you know, because he wasn't coming at it like all cops are bad. I don't think anybody
And they're
thinks
not.
that.
No,
They're
not at all.
obvious.
That's
They're
not the
obviously there obviously is an issue with our justice system and the way that it runs, because you can't keep a justice system the same. You can't expect changes to occur and these systems to stay the exact same.
Right.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
it doesn't, they don't move together then. They don't grow together then. And he was saying that he felt that if cops were educated as well on the people and how to speak to the people, that, you know, I don't know how to even begin to understand how we could make that happen, but like there's just major communication barriers here where
Well, and setups in education too, right? Because like, think about it. If I came to the three of you and I said, listen, you guys, I just studied dentistry for 6 months. I'm awesome. I'm gonna put a sign on my door. I've only studied for 6 months. Would any of the three of you sit in my chair? Would
right?
any three of you sit in my chair?
I probably
6
would.
months? You'd be like, 6 months? I think I'm going to pass. I think I'm going to go to somebody who's kind of been doing this 10 or 12, 13 years. Thank you. That's exactly what they do to us with cops. You put cops through a system for 6 months and then throw them out onto the streets where they have life or death situations at a split second. It doesn't even make any sense. Kind of sounds like it was designed. Don't want to make a big conspiracy theory thing out of it, but it kind of sounds like it was sort of put that way.
Well, my dad, hold on one
look
second.
up the cost of how much people make in Santa Monica. I mean, it's like the police, like the chief of police, all those people, they make a lot of money, and there's a lot of money being spent on this stuff, and no education and learning. It's just like they need cops bad because it's a hard job, but if you sign up for it, you got to do it. And the people that are the heads of everything need to do it better. They're not doing it enough. They're not doing their jobs enough. They're getting paid a lot of money. The taxpayers are paying it. The cost to live in California is outrageous. It's like, get it together.
And that's what's, oh, I'm sorry, Q, go ahead.
Okay. So there were two things that I was just going to bring up. Is one, there was something I was reading that, or hearing, I can't remember, but the training for cops in other countries is more strict just to carry pepper spray than it is to actually carry a weapon like it is in the States.
Exactly.
More countries have to go through more strict background checks, psychological exams, all these other things to carry pepper spray to keep order. One. The other thing that I'd like to touch on was something that we were just talking about. My dad and I actually had a conversation. My dad is, he's an amazing human being. He's in his 70s, but he's just a good person. But the one thing he brought up was, and by the way, my best friend, I'm going to point that out. Dad, if you're watching, he's going to watch this. I love you. And mom and sister. But anyway, but the one thing he brought up was the thing that they used to do back in the day was walk the beats. He said once they started getting cars and jumping into cars, the connection between the community started dissolving, oddly enough.
Wow.
He was like, but he used to walk around and used to say hi to everybody and used to be from that neighborhood, right? And that's still okay in smaller neighborhoods now, but now in larger cities, right? You got to bring them in for what we were talking about. I was listening to something, Patrick, you sent me, but talking about bringing in from hours away to deal with a community that they have no connection to, which is
like if you live in Valencia,
in Thousand Oaks, and you're down Newport Beach.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. You're not connected.
Where's the connection?
But the other thing is walking the beats. The walking the beats where they were in the stores, which like Chicago, when I lived out there, right, running a restaurant, running a business, we had that interaction. But in the communities, in the neighborhoods, and being actually one-on-ones, that's interesting. How do you do that now? How do you go into the hood? How do you go to the south side of Chicago and try to do that now, right? That's the question.
Especially when you didn't even grow up in a neighborhood like that.
Right. Especially, and
that's the problem.
Yeah. And I think about just the relationships in general, and even and I hate to talk about, but we all know there's relationships where we get into, and after years and years and years of being in a relationship, you can't talk anymore. You get into a relationship with opposite sex I'm talking about, right? Or something like that. You get into a relationship and you can't talk anymore. The minute something happens, you both go to your separate corners. We are in that. We are in that in this. Yeah. Anybody know about that? Married or anything like that? But that's what we basically are right now. We've never been married in this company or in this country. I see it as like we're all roommates in this country. We've never been a family in this country. We've never lived in the same household together in this country. No matter how long we've been here, we're on a precipice, I think, of feeling like we're starting to look. I mean, the march is going on right now, all the different colors, everybody coming together. It's the first time I feel like we're all in the same house, if that makes any sense to me, man. And I think
The unity.
the unity is something that is messed up to say. I'm excited about seeing that, and as horrible as where it came from, but if something good can get out of this is one of the most exciting times to me. And to sit back and not be able to try to spread the word or have a communication like we're doing right now on a very serious tip, and cool and calm. I think it's an amazing spot to be. It's an amazing spot to be. And I have a lot of hope for where we're at. A ton of work to do. And everybody's got to do their part. Everybody on both sides of the spectrum, all the sides of the spectrum, they have to do their part.
Well, it's kind of inevitable now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you hope so.
Yeah.
Right. That'd be
Education.
One way or another, this is going to give.
I think it was really cool too, the way you spoke on classism, because I think that's something that's highly overlooked as far as a factor in how this all plays. I mean, even just looking at economically, what's going to happen to a lot of our major cities like LA, Chicago, New York, like people are leaving because of the virus, and then they're divided because of this. There's not even a middle class left to support the cities, which is their infrastructure. And so you're literally going to be left with people that are starving artists or scraping by, or the people that are extra wealthy. And it's going to be really interesting to see how economically we can fix that on top of all these other issues with our country.
And I can remember being 18 in school and then talking about back then, 1920, talking about how the middle class was going bye-bye in this country, and here we are.
Yeah.
Years, exactly.
We're watching it.
We'll say this much. One way or another, the art is going to be off the chain for the next 10 years.
But you know what? We're going to see in movies a whole defined line of like when it happened. Like, right? We're going to be watching, like you look back at like Friends, and they don't have cell phones. Like, when did that start happening? And the same thing now. Everybody's going to be wearing masks everywhere. We're going to see a defined line.
Apparently, none of the Friends had black people either, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, right. Never watched.
They lived in New York City. They came across like 2 black people in like 9 seasons. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
Well done. Yeah, none of that had anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
But listen, I think this has been. I really appreciate it. I think we're coming up on about an hour. I think this is. I feel like it was really good to do. I really appreciate it. Any last words from? We'll start, Ernie.
It was dope meeting you guys, man.
Yeah, you
thanks
too.
for having me on. It was really fun to kind of exchange ideas with you.
Well, and we're gonna get you. We're all working together in different facets now. Ernie, for you guys out there, Ernie's doing his shows and producing some stuff, and you've got. Well, we're working on. You're working on another thing you're writing too right now. Yes, trying to. Or do you want me to talk about that at all?
Well, no. I mean, I'm literally in the middle of 3 different things. Like I had. I'm trying to get Heavy. My show Heavy Like the Weight of a Flame. I'm kind of trying to get it shot with the intention of getting it on a platform like Netflix, because I feel like the platforms they're still using an outdated way of shooting live performances. So I have this whole other idea on how to shoot it that might kind of help revive people watching things that are not just straight comedy. So I'm working on that. And then I have another project that I'm doing with the Andrew Freeman home in the Bronx in New York. That's a story about Jimi Hendrix.
Cool.
And then Smoke is my other solo show. So I'm all that to say, I'm completely schizophrenic at the moment.
All
When
right.
we stop, when the world stops being sick and we can all congregate in the same room, maybe I'll get to perform again. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, don't maybe,
Well-
maybe. I tell you what. Now, if working virtually, buddy, you might be able to, get out the
Yeah.
iPhones and start filming.
Yeah.
No.
Ernie, please let me know what you're up to. I have so many friends and people that follow on my platform in New York. I would love to share your work. It sounds really amazing. I would love to check it out myself.
You have my word. Do you live in LA?
LA, but I usually, besides the virus, am in New York once a month
Okay.
for
Oh,
work.
and
So
we'll be. I mean, again, we're doing some stuff. All of us will be doing stuff. Yeah, 100%. And let me tell you again, Smoke. That's how when I first met him, I saw Smoke. A friend of mine brought me to it, and I was to tears 3 times because it hit me in different levels. I mean, your past, my past. We talked about that, Ernie, on certain levels, certain things. But I had to meet you, and thank God I did, man. One of the best energies on this planet, man, for sure.
Yeah, man.
yeah, I feel that.
Amazing human. So, and Natasha, what you got going on? You got anything going on that people can know about here other than your website and going on?
Yeah, I mean, I always have a lot of stuff going on. I have shows, usually a couple shows a week, virtually right now. But once I get back to LA, my special is going to be coming out soon. I shot it last summer. It's finally about to drop. We just finishing that deal. It's called I Was Supposed to Get Married Today.
Oh, that's a great story, by the way.
Shot it on my wedding day when my wedding was canceled. So yeah, so that's
in the place you were supposed to have a wedding at. Yes.
Okay.
yeah, in my venue. So yeah, so everything I do, I have a platform of a lot of things, but it's all trying to find silver linings. And so just follow me on Instagram, and that's the best way to kind of stay on track of my stuff.
NPH comedy. NPH
Mhm.
comedy. NPH. Ernie, your life.
NPH comedy.
NPH comedy. Ernie, your life child 777 on Instagram.
I am.
Yes.
I am.
Okay.
My child 777. And Patrick, you live in LA too?
I do. I live in Santa Monica.
Right around the corner.
You're
Yeah.
a comedian? Are you doing stuff virtually or?
Yeah. I've been doing some virtual shows for the last month or so, and they've been going pretty good. And I do a lot of wine stuff. That's kind of my other gig besides, playing the men's room at the Greyhound bus station. Basically where I feel like I'm at right now.
Well,
I do these wine tastings. They go good, and I'm trying to sell a show about wine travel and stuff. It's it's a thing for everybody. I just want I'm trying to get do kind of a wine and comedy thing for everybody, because everybody a lot of people are turned on by wine, and I like to have a good time with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's talk about an expressive thing. It's wine comes from all 4 corners of the earth, and it's a beautiful thing, and the people that make it, and the untold stories, and not just boring bullshit or stuff. It's actually fun times.
Just the way you give it your class. It's called High Spirit Show is the name of the show. Well,
Right.
We're looking to try, once we get going, hopefully pop something up going in Chicago around the same time with you there, Natasha. But we trying to do, it's really funny. He makes it very approachable comedy, great show. Being in the restaurant world, it's something that's he's good at. And on top of that, I did see that the what would you call it? The trailer, not the trailer, the for your wine show, for the was sizzle reel for the wine show that he's trying to do. I think it'd be great on Discovery Channel or Travel Channel or something like that. It's really funny, really great. So, and
Or Netflix.
Yeah, I know, or Netflix. But we do a comedy show also every Thursday, typically for those Throwdown Thursdays here. We also host a Monday. We do Mindful Mondays, where we get a little deeper, kind of on this level with a little more lightheartedness, I guess. But obviously, time dictates how we got to get right now. But I really appreciate you all. I look forward to hopefully we do something like this here in the near future. Ernie, the same thing with you. We'll get you on. We'll get you on another Monday. We'll get you on a Monday too. I'd like to continue this conversation.
That would be fun. That would be fun. I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, we always have really amazing conversations. We talked the other night, 2 hours? It was great. It was great.
No doubt.
Well, say what's up to Candy for me, Ernie, and the kids. And Natasha, thank you so much for joining. We'll be talking.
Yeah, thank you.
Talking a little bit. And Patrick, thank you as always, my friend. Very
Peace, everybody.
Thank you guys very much. Everybody watching. Thank you very much, everybody. Be well, be safe. Take care of each other. Much love.
Yes.
Bye. guys. Cheers.
Peace.